Hi everyone. For today's featured ship, we're going to take an introductory look at the Islander. This Canadian Pacific ship is unfortunately more well known as being Alaska's Titanic, and we will find out why this ship has that title in just a moment. But first, let's consider the facts of the ship. The Islander was built in 1888 for the Pioneer Shipping Line, which was a separate entity that operated within the broad umbrella of the Canadian Pacific Navigation Company. However, 2 years after that, in 1890, the Pioneer brand, as we would say now, was wound down and the ship became integrated as part of Canadian Pacific. Its dimensions were 240 feet long, which is 73 meters. The Islander had a beam of 42 feet, or 13 meters, with a draft of 14 feet, which equals 4.3 meters. The ship had triple expansion steam engines, which drove twin propellers at a decent speed of 15 knots. The Islander was not only a good-looking ship, but was also very well fitted out with your typical Victorian-era elegance. The Islander was not only a beautiful ship that was well laid out, but it being built specifically for the inside passage along Alaska's shores, it fulfilled all that was required of it to service those smaller communities in shallower waters. And it did so for well over a decade, until, at 2 a.m. on the 15th of August 1901, the Islander collided with an iceberg along its port bow. The extent of the damage hadn't been fully realized, which did cause a delay in the launch of the lifeboats, but once it was realized that the ship was doomed, every effort was made to get as many people off the ship as they could. However, the Islander sank very quickly in about 15 minutes, and while a lot of people did get off, many were sucked down with the ship and many others succumbed to the ice-cold water. The death toll varies, but we can comfortably say that no less than 47 people lost their lives that night. Now, normally, that's where the story ends, but considering the timing and considering that the ship was carrying with it gold from the Alaskan gold rush, there's one story that always stuck with me that I read as a child, is that apparently there was one man who had a suitcase full of gold nuggets, and he chained that suitcase to his wrist, and as he was evacuating the Islander, he decided to jump off the ship and swim to a lifeboat. He didn't realize that he was essentially carrying dead weight, and obviously he jumped and never resurfaced. In the 1930s, efforts were made to salvage the wreck of the Islander, and that is an entire saga all on its own. Half the ship would end up being raised and the safe would be found, but ultimately only a few odds and ends would be salvaged. And to this day, one of the wrecks of the hulks that were involved in the salvage process can be seen together with some debris involving part of the Islander. And that process is covered in this book, Sunken Klondike Gold, which is also one of my earlier reviews that you can go and check out and find out a bit more information about that and this book. The photographs in this book are spectacular. For those who want to learn more about the Islander itself, really you cannot go any further than Robert Turner's magisterial book, The Pacific Princesses. This is part of a trilogy of books, the first one dealing with the empresses, the ocean-going ships, this one dealing with the more coastal vessels, the princesses, and then there's a third volume dealing with steam tugs and side-wheelers. that particular volume was featured in my brief look at the steamer Bonington. If you want just an overall introduction to Canadian Pacific and their ships with brief information and side profile drawings, well then check out Merchant Fleets number 23 by Duncan Hawes, which features all the ships of Canadian Pacific and including the Islander. However, for the most detailed account of the ship's sinking, go with this book. The story of the Islander is typical of the era. Fine ships lost in tragic and dramatic circumstances, and hopefully with all that you've seen here, there's more than enough to get you started on learning more about this ship, Canadian Pacific, the Alaskan Gold Rush, salvage, and any other associated topic. So do enjoy.